Hello everyone and welcome back to LitBirdie, your one-stop guide for IGNOU English Literature. In this video, we are going to dive deep into block 7 of MEG6, which is the American short story, focusing on two literary giants, Ernest Hemingway and William Faulkner. So, by the end of this lecture, you will understand their styles, themes, and symbolic depth, and you will be ready to answer any IGNOU 20-mark question confidently. So, let's begin. The American short story evolved during the early 20th century, reflecting the modern world's loss of faith and growing isolation. Hemingway and Faulkner represent two very different yet complementary sides of modernism. Hemingway's world is stripped down, realistic, and emotionally restrained, while Faulkner's world is layered, historical, and haunted by the past. And together they show how American writers used fiction to explore morality, identity, and the changing spirit of their nation. If you want, you can read the text given on this slide, right? So it will be clear to you. Then now we will talk about Hemingway. We will first study his bio and then the short story that is there in IGNOU's course, A Clean and Well Lighted Place. So let's begin with Ernest Hemingway's background or bio. Ernest Hemingway was born in 1899 in Oak Park, Illinois. He worked as a journalist, ambulance driver in World War I, and war correspondent also. So these all experiences shaped his minimalist style. He believed that truth lies beneath the surface. This is his iceberg theory, and this theory he used in all of his short stories and whatever he has written. This iceberg theory he used in all of his creations. So, what is iceberg theory exactly is? According to iceberg theory, you see only 1/8 of the iceberg, but the deeper meaning hides below, it's hidden underneath. His prose is lean, direct, and full of tension. His key ideas in his fiction include courage, dignity, isolation, and grace under pressure. So, understand the iceberg theory very well. In case any question is related to Ernest Hemingway, you first explain the iceberg theory clearly. Then now we will talk about his short story, which is very short and almost like a micro fiction. It's just a 2-page story which is also given in your IGNOU course, and I would recommend that you read this story. It's a nice story, and it's very short, so you can read it easily also. So the story was published in 1933, and this short story is set in a quiet Spanish cafe late at night, and there are only three main characters in this story. One is an old deaf man who is very rich, one is a young waiter, and another is one old waiter. So the story begins like this. The old man drinks brandy alone in silence. The young waiter wants to close early, while the older waiter feels empathy for the man's loneliness because he is also old. So, through their dialogue, Hemingway captures something very profound, the emptiness and despair of modern life and the human need for light, cleanliness, and order in a meaningless world. So, this is somehow related to the existential crisis which Ernest Hemingway also suffered later in his life. So, this story is the story of silence, sadness, and spiritual hunger. Now, themes and symbols in Hemingway. The overall theme in the Hemingway, in any Hemingway's creation, are resonates with this story as well. They do resonate with this story as well. So let's begin with the core theme. The core theme is of nada. Nada in Spanish means the word for this is the word for nothingness. Both the old man and the older waiter struggle with the awareness that life may have no meaning. So this is the main uh, thing which forms the basis of existentialism. Then the lighted cafe becomes a symbol of temporary refuge, a place where order exists in the midst of darkness. Light versus darkness, cleanliness versus chaos, and dignity versus despair define the moral space of the story. Hemingway writes, "It was all a nothing, and a man was nothing too." So, this is all about nothingness, nada, which is the Spanish word for nothingness. Hemingway's style mirrors this emptiness, short, repetitive, rhythmic sentences that sound like prayers against the void. If you read the story, you will come to know about this. Then Hemingway's style and technique. Hemingway's writing is deceptively simple. He was called the minimalist of American literature. He rarely explains emotions. Instead, we feel them through his pauses, repetition, and silences in his prose. His dialogues carry psychological weight. He uses minimal description yet achieves maximum emotional impact. For exam answers highlight his iceberg theory and the theme of spiritual darkness and nothingness, and how light becomes a metaphor for human dignity in a meaningless world. So, this was all about Hemingway and his short story, A Clean and Well Lighted Place. Now moving on to the next short story writer who is very celebrated writer, and that is William Faulkner. So first we will study the background or the author bio, and then we will study the summary and the plot of his short story The Bear, which is also given in your IGNOU course material, but it's a kind of a long short story. You can call it a novella as well, but I would recommend that you, if you have time, you read this story as well. So let's begin. Now let's move from urban cafes to the deep American South. William Faulkner was born in 1897 in Mississippi. His fictional Yoknapatawpha County mirrors the real South. So what William Faulkner did, he created a fictional county which was also supposed to be which was also supposed to be in the South and the Mississippi. So, and he named this county Ayoknapatawpha County, and this county was full of history, slavery, guilt, and decaying traditions. He used long sentences instead of Hemingway, who used short sentences. Faulkner used long sentences. He also used multiple viewpoints, not just the first person perspective or the second person perspective, but he used multiple viewpoints and stream of consciousness narration. If you would like to know about stream of consciousness in detail, just comment below and I would explain this in detail in another video. While Hemingway wrote about modern loneliness, Faulkner explored the burden of the past, how history shapes morality. Faulkner received the Nobel Prize in 1950 for his powerful portrayal of the human heart in conflict with itself. So this was about William Faulkner's bio. Now we will study the summary of his short story, which is in our IGNOU course, The Bear. Now Faulkner's The Bear is a part of Go Down Moses collection. It's a part of a collection and it blends myth, morality and nature. It follows Isaac McCaslin, nicknamed Ike, who grows up learning to hunt in the Mississippi wilderness under the guidance of Sam Fathers, a wise mixed-race mentor. Their annual hunting expedition seeks the legendary bear Old Ben, a creature so enormous and elusive it becomes almost spiritual. Old Ben represents untamed nature, pure, noble, and eternal. When he is finally killed, it feels like the death of the Old South itself, a symbol of human greed and moral corruption. Ike later rejects his family inheritance, refusing land stained by slavery and injustice. This act of renunciation becomes his moral awakening. So this was all about. This is a very short summary of the entire novella, which is in the IGNOU material. I would strongly suggest that you read this novella, and then only it will be easier for you to answer the questions related to this story or William Faulkner in particular. Now, the themes and characters in this short story, or we can say it a novella because it is a longer one, so we can call it a novella. So, the themes and characters in The Bear. First is man versus nature. Faulkner shows how mankind destroys what is sacred in its quest for power. Then guilt and heritage. Ike recognizes that the wealth of white Southerners came from exploitation and sin. Then moral redemption. By giving up his inheritance, Ike chooses conscience over comfort. So these are the three important and main themes of this story. If you would like, you can add some smaller themes, minimal themes as well. The main characters of this story are Ike McCaslin, who is a moral idealist, Sam Fathers, the symbol of wisdom and humility before nature, Old Ben, which is a bear, the spiritual soul of the wilderness. Faulkner's story blends myth, realism, and allegory, making it one of IGNOU's most analyzed texts. So it is quite important from exam point of view. So just go through this story and check whether you are able to answer the 20 mark questions related to this story or not. In case not, you can always comment me and I can help you with the notes also. Now let's compare the two modernist short story writers or the two modernist masters of American fiction or American short fiction. Uh, when we compare, we found that Hemingway writes with clarity and control. He used few words, much emotion beneath, and he followed this iceberg theory. On the other hand, Faulkner writes with complexity and density, long, layered sentences full of memory and myth. Then Hemingway's world is modern, urban, and detached. In Clean, Well Lighted Place, also, he talks about an Spanish cafe. So his world is modern and urban and also detached, while Faulkner is rural, historical, and haunted. So, as I told you earlier, he had created a fictional county in the south, Yoknapatawa County, and his stories are basically set in that county only. So, he was rural, historical, and haunted. Yet, both writers explored the search for meaning and moral truth. They are united by their belief that courage, integrity, and human dignity survive even in a broken world. So, with this, we finish Faulkner also. Now, exam focus and tips. If we talk about exam strategy and essential tip for IGNOU Meg 6 exam, questions often ask you to discuss a clean, well lighted place as a modernist story of spiritual emptiness, then explain symbolism and myth in Faulkner's The Bear, compare Hemingway and Faulkner as modern storytellers, comment on the moral and psychological depth in both. Now, if I would give some writing tips, I would suggest that you start with a short introduction in which you will explain about the author bio and the context of the story. Then add 2-3 paragraphs on the themes and symbolism of the story. Then quote lines like Nada, Yapur Nada from Hemingway and from Faulkner, the past is never dead, it's not even past. So if you remember these two quotes, that are enough. If any of these stories are asked, you can write these quotes respectively. And then you end with a balanced conclusion on the modern man's moral struggle. Keep your answers around 650 to 700 words for 20 mark questions. So this was the STAR strategy. Now we came to the end of the lecture, and that's it for today's session on block 7, the American short story. I hope this helped you understand Hemingway and Faulkner better. If it is, do give a thumbs up and share it with your IGNOU classmates. In case you need notes, just comment in the section below and I would help you with the notes as well. So that's it for today. Thank you.